Hey, what's up? What's up? It's so exciting to have you and to be here with you guys live. I need to see who is in the room right now. Let's go here. Keep that. I really love that intro. I know that we have, if you're in the room right now, I know that we have people. If you're just coming here to visit, come and make some noise in the comments section. We're all about community here. We're all about sharing. Miss Dorothy, oh my gosh, I so want to talk to you. I need to talk to you so bad. You keep on, I'm gonna throw around and pull you on stage tonight. Let me cut that music down just a little bit. Who's on YouTube? I know we got some viewers on YouTube. Hey, I promise you, people wait until really late to get online and get on this. I know the presidential debate is about to come on, but I promise you, this is going to be way more interesting and intriguing. You can watch the replay of that for sure. But this is going to be powerful. Just the conversation I just had is, oh my God. This guy is a divine soul, and he's going to bring something. Oh my goodness. Y'all get ready with the questions. Miss Deidre, I haven't forgot about you. I appreciate you. I thank you so much for everything you've done and are doing. I plan on really helping and bringing people like César to the platform. Miss Marie, I love that picture. Yes. Expanded conscious community. 100%. I love you guys. You guys are amazing. Truly amazing. It gives you purpose. It gives you reason. It gives you connection when you have things like this. Miss Velma, I appreciate you so much. 100%. You've been there since the beginning. And of course, my dear Miss Dorothy, you excite me so much. Miss Nancy, good to see you in the room. Thank you for speaking up. So many people be watching. Oh, Miss Tia. Yes. Miss Tia is a really dear friend here in Tulsa. Amazing coach. Person, most definitely. And Brother Ruben. I think that, and I know that you guys are really going to love this episode. It's already my favorite episode, and I haven't even begun. Yeah. I would go as far as to say that. It's already the favorite. Mother White, yes, good to see you. Miss Jennifer Brown, good to see you. Hey, there's another thing we do. Like there, hello family, you right there. Go ahead and communicate and comment to everyone in the room, right? Just as almost like we're having a conversation. And I want to make sure that as many people as possible are able to tap in and tune in to what is about to take place. Because believe me, me and lighting and stuff, I don't play. It's not like I want it, but it's okay. You're in for a treat. That's one thing that I know for a fact, and I will say is we are in for a treat. We have Brother César. He's out of Canada. I believe, by the way of Africa. And I will give you a resume here in a minute. But tonight's show is religious trauma. And we're going to be talking about deconstructing blackness and the world from religion. A few episodes back, if you get a chance, you can go see and watch as I had a conversation with author Keith Giles, amazing man. And the last thing we had a conversation about was Black racism. Black deconstructing from religion is how it's differs from white deconstructing. One thing is that they have the ability and the community to deconstruct, and then we get into colonization and how we have come to where we are, especially when you look at African Americans and you look at Christian nationalism and you look at how Black people feel about religion and how Black people feel about when we get too in, we get too spiritual, if you will, whenever it comes to religion. We're going to have some fun this evening. You guys ready? I know I'm ready. I got some wonderful videos that we're going to listen to that I think will be really good to help. I'm gonna cue up another video that Christian A. Smith put out that relates a lot to this. I'm gonna next have him come back on the show. But brother César here, I put his bio also in the description on YouTube, just in case that you really want to see more of that. But there's one thing I want to do before this. He has his bio is long, right? This guy is phenomenal. What I like to do is I like to show more than I like to just speak on it. But his history, a lot of his bio is the fact that this guy is he's the Eastern Ontario Regional Director for Equality, Justice, and Inclusivity, dealing with child welfare. He's a special consultant to Public Safety Canada. He's Canada's representative in martial arts academia and at the United Nations. University of Ottawa's Faculty of Arts, Equality, Diversity, and Inclusion expert advisor. He is the president of North-South Development Roots and Culture Canada, International 2022, USID HR Human Rights Consultant Award, the National 2023 Dr. Martin Luther King Canada's Lifetime Achievement Award, Academic Society member of the Global Center for Religious Research. How I come across him is I was with Brother John Thomas at his home, and we were viewing some things on religious trauma certification that John Thomas was doing. And we seen a topic, and it said Black religious trauma, a Pan-Africanist lens, with Brother César Ndéma-Moussa, I believe. He'll let me know if I butchered it or not. But let's just kind of view that real quick. Just a little piece of that. I have that queued up here so that we can kind of get a glimpse of what we're in for.
Africa is a continent where, in order to be elected, one ensures to have the support of the local religious leaders. If you look at the country, arguably the richest country on earth, at the center of Africa, called Congo, one of the destabilizing factors of Congolese politics is the involvement of the Congolese Catholic Church. It is no accident that Pope Francis II went to Congo. You look at my birth country of Cameroon. How do you explain that so many people see so often apparitions, basically the Virgin Mary or Jesus, appearing to them? It is not. It is simply as a tool of manipulation. Uh, People wanting to come out of socioeconomic disempowerment. You look at so many Black people will claim to suddenly discover that they were Jewish, or will claim to suddenly discover uh, that basically Jesus appeared to them and therefore they must become pastors or they must become prophets or apostles. It is a tragedy. It's a tragedy that dumbed down people and that contributes to the oppression of the masses for the benefit of very few. It is extremely dangerous. And if I can dare to say just one last thing, for those who would want to contradict me, absolutely the fathers of Pan-Africanism were Christian. The greatest Pan-Africanist, Marcus Garvey, was a Christian. Thomas Sankara was a Christian. Patrice Lumumba was a Christian. However, it would be intellectually hypocrite to pretend they live in a time of access to knowledge and freedom of speech to address religion as we do today. Even myself speaking today, I am absolutely aware that if I lived 60 years ago in the time of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, this would not be my speech on religion, because more than likely the focus will be to exit colonization, segregation, etc. We are out of slavery. We are out of colonization, direct slavery, direct colonization. I mean, we are in a time of integration where me and you can be on the screen having this conversation from Ottawa, Canada to Denver, Colorado, and we have the time, the leisure, the means to be able to study, the privilege to study these fields and to address them for the masses, to awaken them. It is why it's important. So the movement of Ethiopianism, which was basically the pride of Africa that notably contributed to Pan-Africanism, yes, the founding leaders were Christians, as so many African fathers of independence, and Malcolm X was Muslim, Martin Luther King was Christian, but guess what? In the time, in the reality, addressing religion was not possible, as notably they lacked the knowledge. I mean, Malcolm X met the king of Saudi Arabia in 1964, 2 years after they abolished officially slavery. How was he going to address religion? This was not the time. The means were not there.
If you continue watching the video, the guy that's a part of it is like, whew. He laid it out so beautiful and so well. Hopefully this is going to work. It looks like we may be having a slight technical difficulty.
My apologies.
Okay. Make it okay. You can. There we go. I can at least hear you. Okay. Good. I wasn't sure. Brother, my brother. Thank you for coming on to the show, Expanding Consciousness, Unlocking Your Potential Beyond Belief. And it's a wonderful and a joy that I was able to get connected to you and then help spread this new gospel.
Thank you. Thanks you so much for having me. Thank you to everyone and the messages already, everyone attending, supporting. Thanks for being on the show and my support. We need more of these Black people, the whole world, of course, especially Black people. And thank you to everyone being with us, then being with the other two men who are debating.
Which we can get into. Absolutely, we could get into. I think, it is what it is, and they're going to talk what they're going to talk about. And ultimately, we know where we stand. But the first thing I would like to, of course, just getting deep into this because of the fact that a lot of the people that follow me are fully aware, are connected, and are people that are active within this meaning and this message, but they can be provided some clarity in terms of religious trauma, and specifically Blackness and religious trauma. I'm going to hand you the floor, right? You have lots of presentations and lots of things you've done, but I would like for you to talk to us and be able to tap in and tune in on colonization, the African American experience when it comes to how we got to where we are. And then I have some other videos that I listened to where you talked about, um, of course, Christianity from an Eastern standpoint, and then moving into how the West takes its version of it. So let's just get really into it and give your connection to Blackness and deconstructing, and what you feel, and what, you know, from where we are, or where it began, to where we are now.
No, thank you, Brother Malachi, and very strong questions, multiple ones. Um, First of all, in terms of the African American experience, let me uh, let me state that I am not African American. My wife is. My wife is African American. Um, but truthfully, um, as we see so well, notably in regards to such things as police brutality, but truly systemic racism, our skin color is all it takes for us to be victimized, as we saw notably in the times of COVID, just 3, 4 years ago, where blacks, be they African born from the continent or African Americans, were victims of racism, notably in China. So we're talking about something worldwide. Without losing myself too much, it's important for our people to understand. And, you know, when we talk about the deconstruction of religion, and notably in terms of religious trauma, and why Blackness takes a particular importance, Blackness is shunned truthfully on the four corners of the world. Uh, we are victims of racism. When you look at, for example, the United Nations, there are particularly two groups of people who are recognized in terms of, and I'm trying to say this in the most proper terms without any dramatism, um, two peoples who are recognized in a victimizing state simply for belonging. Those two groups of people, indigenous peoples and black people. Because, and this may surprise a lot of people hearing this, even in Africa, black people are victims of racism. And I'm not just talking about colorism. I'm talking about even in Africa, black people can be victim of can be and are victim of racism, to be quite honest. So when we see here uh, the very aspect, as you were asking, regarding notably Christianity from the east to the west. Well, first of all, my friends, Christianity did not begin in Africa. It is a common lie that people, black people, you know, kind of as a survival instinct, tell themselves, repeat, but it's not true. If you look at, for example, the first Christian state was not Ethiopia, it was Armenia. Armenians, you know, Armenians, the Kardashians. Um, you know, you basically have to see how, for example, in the beginning of Christianity, the sect of Jews uh, who began Christianity uh, about 300 years later, a sect that was oppressed, a sect that basically dissociated itself from Judaism, truthfully, in the second century, following the Third Roman Jewish War, the War of Simon Bar Kokhba, roughly around 140. That's when Christianity really split from Judaism. But it's the coming to power of Caesar Constantine. So Constantine will basically became the first Christian emperor, and then the Council of Nicaea, and eventually by the end of that century, the fourth century, with Theodosius, you see Christianity become truly the religion of state. So, an interesting fundamental difference that came with Christianity becoming the religion of state of Rome is that it's also the beginning of homophobia in Europe. Homophobia did not exist in Europe prior to Christianity becoming the official religion, and from there became the imposition of the cult, of the new religion, of the new dogma. The most important character to have spread the religion was actually not a Roman emperor. He was an emperor, but 4 centuries later, Carolus Magnus, Charlemagne. Many say Emperor of France, but truly he was the emperor of everything you see on the map of Europe, from France to now Germany to Central Europe, the beginning of the Holy Roman Empire. That was Charlemagne, Carolus Magnus. So anyone named Charles and such names, that's where it comes from. He imposed Christianity by the sword, the many beheadings, many killings, burning of holy trees, of forests, etc. So, truthfully, by the time it came to the Africans, and here you have to see a context. The context is uh, the beginning of the enslavement of Africans. People tend to think the 17th or 16th century. No, the middle of the 15th century by the Portuguese, 1443, 1444, in Capo Verde. Take a look at, just Google the images of what people of Capo Verde, an island off the coast of Africa next to Senegal, what they look like. That's where the Portuguese began the racial experiments, aka the mass rapes of black women and the use of biracial slash mixed Africans as overseers of the darker skins, while being as the children, the sons of the masters. Disastrous consequences that they would bring to Brazil. Brazil, which would become not only the most mixed, racially mixed society in the world, but the country that had slavery lasting the longest in the Americas. But that kind of behavior that the Portuguese began is also one of the fundamental causes of the ills that still impact Haiti today. When you go back to the beginning of Christianity imposition upon blacks, you look at Pope Nicholas V, but you look at the context also of the fall of Byzantium to the Ottoman Turks in 1453. And as such, the white European Christians are no longer able to go in pilgrimage to Jerusalem, and especially unable to go to the east, to India and the spices, and China for notably the porcelains. A new route, a new way, another logic, an imposition of non-Christians, non-whites becoming enslaved. And here you go, you basically come to the middle, of course, Christopher Columbus, 1492, and 1550, the debate of Valladolid. The debate of Valladolid, where, and I might be getting the name of the religious, Bartolomeo de las Casas, argued in front of the most powerful men of the time, of Europe at least, maybe of the world, Charles Kent, the emperor. Just look at his empire. You will see how huge he was. He argued to save the indigenous of the Americas. But then came the issue of, if the indigenous of the Americas can no longer be used as slaves to enrich the European nations, who shall replace them? It is from there that it was decided it would be the Africans, living under the same tropics, but then being associated with this strength, this endurance, and thus all the social constructions about blackness that led to scientific racism, to slavery, colonization, etc. And still today, when you look at, for example, the opioid crisis, which is killing overwhelmingly whites, it's a medical issue. But crack, marijuana, etc., black bodies, black minds being devalued. So I'm not going to do too much history there, but that's basically what led the type of constructions time and again for power, for privilege. So many of the families that we see today, and it's not just the British royal family, well, the rich of slavery, the rich of the blood, sweat, and tears of our people. And part of the enrichment required not so much the killing of us as physical beings, but the breaking of us, the breaking of our minds and our souls. And I give you a very good example that I think many of our fellow sisters and brothers will remember. Kunta Kinte becoming Toby. Kunta Kinte did not become Toby because he suddenly was Christian. He didn't become Toby because he suddenly found a better life. Some of you may remember the words of that uh, representative from Florida, a black woman, who said, "Thanks God for slavery, for at least she discovered Christianity in America through her ancestor." No, Kunta Kinte became Toby due to the whip, due to the violence. And others, survival came to accept Christianity, just as on the eastern part of the world, for black people to survive, it was to accept Islam. Notably because they saw what happened to others, the savagery, the brutality. The same people who would come claiming religion of peace, religion of love, were the same people killing those who look like us, raping our family members, women, but also men, castrating them, destroying them to break us. And before people think I'm just saying anything and everything bad regarding religion, because that's not the case at all. This is where you see gospel coming, and notably gospel music. This is where you see not just the resilience, but the resistance of the African American through gospel, through the black church, in terms of soul, in terms of spirituality, to survive, to try to keep the family unit together, to resist to the pain of the KKK, of Jim Crow, of moving up north thinking it's freedom and still discovering racism, of forgiving one another for a moment of weakness or for the illusions at the time of loving a white person and being a victim of racism within the couple, within the family. So the very black experience when it comes to religion, and I'm focusing more on the West, but I really hope we will get to talk also of the East and really worldwide, is one of constant survival, constant resilience, constant even behaviors that truthfully are dysfunctional, such as why blacks tend to forgive time and again the atrocities done by them to whites came as a form of survival far more than because it's true forgiveness. It's an adaptation to kind of you see in workplace offices today, the smiling black person, the kinder than usual black person, the black person bending backwards to keep their job. Just as we see of too many of our students in high school and elementary being entertainers, being loud, it's not because they're bad kids, but the socialization has them see Celebrities who look like them far too often acting like clowns to secure that paycheck, to secure that survival in the white world, to secure a constant spotlight to keep making white. And when I say white, I don't just mean descendants of Europeans. I'm talking about Indo-Europeans, so white Indians, Persians, Caucasians, aka Armenians, Georgians, Europeans, Slavic people, Latin people, etc. I'm talking about white worldwide to keep entertaining them. That's why the first cancer of the black psyche that I address is entertainment.
Ooh, I like where this is going. I want to pick that. I want to pick that back up, but there's something that I really want to make a connection with is between the colonization, Christianity, or even Islam and black folks. What is it when you look at Pan-Africanism? What did we have originally? And now that we have Christianity, especially in the when you talk about gospel music, when you talk about a lot of our history,
Mhm.
like we can't. The minute we try to shake anything to do with uh, Christianity or anything to do with a lot of the things that they talk about, black folks particularly, and we start talking about spirituality or spirit African spiritualism, it goes demonic, it goes devil, it goes, and then we
Yes.
start. I mean, there's a full documentary out right now talking about how Christianity was with black people before it was with white people. And so in order for us to actually really deconstruct, I think we really need to deeply understand, like you talked about some of the history of colonization, but within your framework of religious trauma, and what are some of those affects, or effects of trauma that we may experience, especially as black people?
Let me put it to you like this, my brother. Tomorrow afternoon, I will be going to the funeral of a dear friend. She died at just age 43 of cancer. Allow me not to give her name out of respect for her family. But my wife was very moved because she really liked her. And it will be the first passing of life that our 3 year old daughter will attend. And it's a celebration. It's a celebration of her life. So, to your question, some of our listeners, of our viewers, may have seen the movie Black Panther 2. Notice how Chadwick Boseman was brought, aka Black Panther, Chala, was brought to the transfer life. Everybody is dressed in white. White is the color of death. I want people to be careful in understanding what I'm saying. I don't want people to deform my words here. It's not white in terms of skin. I'm talking white in terms of a color of death because when people die, they get paler, paler, and paler. That aspect notably helped white people when they would arrive on lands where they hadn't been seen before. Many of the indigenous people worldwide overwhelmingly tend to be different shades of brown to dark brown, just as science tells us. The further you go back in time, and it's just 8 to 10,000 years ago, all human beings were dark brown, black. Example, cheddar men in England. So when you ask about the differences, one of the things is that we've been lied to. We've been conned. We've been conned because a great part of the construction of these religions has been of these religions claiming to be universal has been on the back of blackness, has been on the back of, some people say, the original man. I don't use such language, but no matter which part of the world you are at, the further you go back in history, the first humans were black. And this greatly bothers a lot of people. I give you a perfect example here as we're speaking about Christianity and Islam, but even in China, the official doctrine for decades was education about the roots of Chinese people being Beijing men, that Chinese came from a different kind of humanity than the rest of humans who evolved from the monkey out of Africa. By the way, that's not true. That's just, we don't evolve out of monkeys, FYI. But even honest Chinese scientists were able to prove factually, including with DNA, that all Chinese originate from blacks out of Africa. So what happens with Christianity and Islam is quite simple. This will shock a lot of people because I don't really, the problem, I shouldn't say it like that. But one of the things that come when you have, I don't want to say a lot of knowledge. I'm not trying to brag, but
No, you're fine.
Just wait to hear what I'm going to say, because someone had told me, be careful when you tell certain truths to people who are not used to hearing certain truths. It can be quite disturbing and very hard to accept. Let's put it to you this way. In order to avoid a European war at the end of the 19th century, in 1884-1885, the Conference of Berlin was organized by the German Chancellor Otto von Bismarck. And the result of that was the African cake, where basically Africa was divided into colonies for the European nations, England and France getting the most parts, etc. My birth country, Cameroon, original colonizers, the Germans. 1918, Germany loses World War I. Cameroon is split between France and England. And this is part of the reason why Cameroon, along with Canada, unless I'm wrong, are the only two countries in the world where the official languages are English and French. In Canada, 3/4 speak English, 1/4 French. In Cameroon, 3/4 French, 1/4 English. Okay. But you can see that 1960, the year of independence of Africa, made it that 75 years of colonization of Africa. And look at us, 24 years, 64 years after, look at the damages, look at the scar, look at how colonization has destroyed so many Africans in their souls. Even to the fact of, as everybody sees, look at my name. My first name, that's not an African name. When have you ever seen a white person with an African first name? Meanwhile, we find it so normal to read of a black person with a white European name, white Arab name, white Jewish name, etc. So I needed to say that if you can see the damage that 75 years of colonization has created, I needed to say that so I can take you many centuries before, a couple of millennia ago. I'm going to take you to 3,500 years ago. roughly 3,500 years ago, when one of the greatest pharaohs, arguably Ramses II is deemed the greatest of all pharaohs, but another one, Tutmosis, I would get his number wrong, the third or the fourth, but Tutmosis, the one who was the stepson of Queen Hatshepsut, the greatest African conqueror, by the way, he began the colonization of Canaan. Canaan, a colonization that lasted 300 years, or a little bit more than 300 years. For those who don't exactly understand what I mean here, today you see Jewish people, overwhelmingly we're seeing white Jews, the ancestors, the ancestors of the Hebrews are the Canaanites. And now you're thinking about the Bible, you're thinking about the Torah, and you should also think about the Quran. 300 years of colonization by dark skinned Kemet, people from Kemet, ancient pharaonic Black Egypt. Yes, some people like to argue that Kemet meant black soil for the richness of the soil. I, along many others, and a growing number, as Sheikh Anta Diop, but also many white experts, are adamant ancient Egypt was a black ruled land as they painted themselves. So here you have to think about land that was colonized by black people who look like us, who were darker than us. And we know darker than us because today you look at um, the Sudanese were often the police and into the armies of Pharaoh. So for 300 years, the ancestors of the people who wrote the Bible. For those who don't know, the Bible was written during the ancient testament, the Torah, was written by four writers in a period of 70 years during the captivity in Babylon in the 6th century. Those are the descendants, the people who wrote the Torah, the ancient testament, are the descendants of those who were colonized by people who look like us for 300 years. The demonization of black people, the hatred towards black people, you can also see it just a few months ago in the context of Israel versus Hamas. The Prime Minister of Israel, Bibi, Benjamin Netanyahu, talked about, I try to remember his language, the children of light versus the children of darkness. That kind of language, apocalyptic. That's where it comes from. Talking about the Armageddon. And we have our black people, too many who are very religious, convinced that a Jesus Christ is coming tomorrow or Allah will punish whoever. Talking about Armageddon. Armageddon is a fictional creation out of literature that refers to the two battles of Megiddo. Megiddo, Meggido, in the 16th century, if I remember my dates correctly, and in the 8th century. Two battles during which the ancestors of the Jewish people got beaten by the dark armies, the armies of blacks, of Africans. The ancestors got crushed twice, as in the context of geopolitics at the time. The enemy of our ancestors in ancient Egypt were the Assyrians, were the Hittites, and the land of Canaan was in between what today is Turkey and what today is Syria and what today is Jordan, Iraq, etc. It was a transit land. It was a land where the great empires would do battle. So for those who don't know, by the way, King Solomon, 300 wives, 700 concubines, and the great kingdom that's used notably by the Zionists to claim all this land, it's all fiction. That didn't happen. Any honest historian will tell you it's all fiction. It didn't happen. It's made up. So this is where the hatred in terms of Abrahamic faiths begin. And this spread into Christianity in terms of the hatred of blackness. Just as in terms of the Islam. Before Islam, you already had anti-blackness. It already existed, and this is factually proven by even Arab Muslim historians. As we live today, my black people think Arab equals white. They're lying to us. The white Arabs are the descendants of the colonizers who came from the East, the Indo-Europeans. They are the descendants of the Aryans from Iran and the Iranian plateau. Those white Arabs are called the Adnanites. That's the true name. Adnanites means light. They conquered the Catanites, the descendants of Catan, the dark-skinned indigenous Arabs. Today, there are still indigenous Arabs. Indigenous Arabs are not white. They're black, and they're still victim of racism in Saudi Arabia, in Yemen. Before Islam, anyone can look this up. The pre-Islamic poetry of Antar and Abla, Antaar, Antar and Abla, Abla. Antar, a black man, who fell in love with Abla, a white woman, in the Hejaz, basically where Saudi Arabia is. Meanwhile, in the East, when you look at the Brahmic faiths, so the faiths that coincide with seeing Brahma as the supreme god, so Hinduism, Jainism, etc. The faiths out of India, if you wish, without counting Buddhism, because that's a different story. But when you look at, for example, in Brahmism, it is the constant invasions of light-skinned people from the north. Again, the Iranian plateau, from where comes the Aryans, from Arya, meaning pure, constantly evading the darker skinned people of the south, the Dravidians, dark people like us, and changing the caste system. The caste system, which was a system as per occupations, aka the soldier class, the artisan class, craftsmen, the farmer class, etc., and on top, of course, the noble and the religious leaders. Changing the caste system from occupation to being also linked to colorism, where lighter skin is at the top, darker skin is at the bottom, and at the very bottom, and it's still the case today. Most people think at the bottom is the Dalits, aka the untouchables. That's true. Technically, they're out of the caste system. For information, it is technically illegal to still apply the caste system in India. That was revoked in 1947 when India became independent. Technically, but in reality, it's still the case. But the Dalit are actually the untouchables. They're not actually at the bottom of the system. The Dalit fought for the rights, and here, when we make the connection, when I say we are all connected as Black people, and you may have seen this in my presentation, the Dalit Panthers, the Dalit Black Panthers were inspired by the African American Black Panthers to organize themselves and to stand up for the rights. But at the bottom of the Dalits, you have the Shidis, Sidis in India, Shidis in Pakistan, who are the blacks who are descendants of slavery through the Arabs, through the Muslims who came to Africa.
There's something, I'm going to go to your presentation real quick here. Moving it, looking at that history that ties us into where we are today. And this was something that was in your presentation. It will be very familiar to you. And this was, I'm going to hit play real quick and then this was the Haiti and how it's kind of tying Blackness and Black people to religion. This was real interesting, and we'll have some comments on this.
Unfortunately, this type of stories, this type of narratives.
Oh, okay. Yes, here we go. That was actually your voice. Here we go.
The minds of blacks in keeping them as subject and making them wish and desire anything and everything that comes from whites. This is still present as we notably see in Africa. People will notably come together for an African to go risk their life to cross the Mediterranean instead of helping to build locally. It is still very present in terms of how even a white tourist who might be about 6 feet tall, having brown hair, all you need is to put a white toga and sandals on him, and many Africans will flock convinced it is Jesus' return.
We'll go back to that. But this here.
As we are speaking of Haiti, it's important that we take a moment as Pat Robertson passed, but we must not forget what Pat Robertson talked about as we talked of the trauma that he inflicted to many Haitians, a trauma which unfortunately many Haitians still believe today in light of so many tragedies that occur to the country, natural tragedies just as political. Allow me to play this short clip.
Pat, this is a calamity of cataclysmic proportions. I'm sure it's the worst thing that's happened.
Might be a massive rebuilding of that.
Optimistic attitude.
Christy, something happened a long time ago in Haiti, and people might not want to talk about it. They were under the heel of the French, Napoleon the Third and whatever. And they got together and swore a pact to the devil. They said, "We will serve you if you'll get us free from the French." It's a true story. And so the devil said, "Okay, it's a deal." And they kicked the French out. The Haitians revolted and got themselves free. But ever since, they have been cursed by one thing after the other, desperately poor. That island of Hispaniola is one island. It's cut down the middle. On the one side is Haiti, on the other side is the Dominican Republic. Dominican Republic is prosperous, healthy, full of resorts, etc. Haiti is in desperate poverty. Same island. They need to have, and we need to pray for them, a great turning to God. And out of this tragedy, I'm optimistic something good may come.
All right. What the hell was he talking about?
This is really what we're talking about in terms of religious trauma. And let me say this: the black woman, the sister who was there agreeing, is the case of too many black people who have been convinced that what is part of their spirituality, their strength, the voodoo that helped to free Haiti, Bois Caïman, Boukman, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, and Toussaint Louverture. This was not cursed. This is not evil. I mean, Pat Robertson is not a historian, but first of all, the Napoleon he was speaking of is Napoleon the First, who reinstated, because slavery was abolished in Saint-Domingue, the original name of the island, as per whites, because that was not the name by the Tainos. But the French Revolution ended slavery. Napoleon reestablished it because his wife, Joséphine de Beauharnais, this may shock a lot of our sisters listening here, the wife of Napoleon Bonaparte, Napoleon I, was a Creole. Today, we say Creole, we think of Beyonce. Original Creole meant the white people born in the Caribbean. But in reinstating slavery, because his wife is a daughter of a slave master for profits, even Napoleon ended up admitting that he should have made alliance with Toussaint Louverture and the blacks fighting for freedom, as ultimately Napoleon's goal was truly to conquer the Americas. At the time, today, we see Louisiana as a small state in the south of the US, but at the time, before the purchase of Louisiana, one of the greatest deals of early capitalism, Louisiana was the center of the United States, and went all the way to what do you call that? Pretty much New France. It was huge. But long story short, Pat Robertson absolutely being a racist, absolutely lying. Haiti is not cursed. Haiti sits on tectonic plates which explain the natural tragedies such as earthquakes. But at the same time, the mismanagement of resources is notably what leads Haitians to do such thing as how do you call that? The burning of wood without restraints for daily uses. And FYI, Dominican Republic is not as rich as Pat Robertson paints it because it greatly survives off tourism, but prostitution, drugs are rampant in Dominican Republic. But we only see the touristic side, yet that same touristic side that has prostitution, pedophilia, etc., etc. I mean, Pat Robertson is just your stereotypical white evangelist. I'm not putting them all in the same basket. However, the very ideology is what truly led to Christian fascism. And let's not forget, Haiti got crippled from the start for its freedom with being imposed to pay damages to France for the slave masters. That's why today, as we speak, as we were in the United Nations, at the United Nations in Geneva, Switzerland, in April, the movement of reparations for Haiti is gaining tractions. Gaining tractions as, if we are to be honest, Haiti has been robbed by France, but also by the United States. How many people know that 1915, roughly 100 years ago, the United States invaded Haiti, borderline turning it into a colony? So Pat Robertson lies, but he lies out of indoctrination. But those lies are dangerous. Those lies are the results of decades and centuries of white supremacy. When you have the philosopher such as Hegel, that we still learn about in universities, an early 19th century German philosopher Hegel, talking about Haiti and black people having contributed nothing to humanity, repeated by such men as the former French president Nicolas Sarkozy in his 2007 speech of Dakar, my first political speech, which is actually hanging there on top of the photo here behind me. But you also see this type of rhetoric taken by even our own black people, becoming convinced that Haiti is cursed, becoming convinced that voodoo is evil, becoming convinced that our black skin is a curse and not a badge of honor. As the greatest Pan-Africanist Marcus Garvey himself said, the religious trauma that such men as Pat Robertson inflict upon black people is in the very intent of controlling and maintaining whiteness on top of blackness, maintaining and controlling that narrative of a white God, a white Jesus, a white Allah, a white Moses, a white Shiva. And time and again, what is dark is seen as evil, devilish, wrong, crooked. Even our honorable hero, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., prior to being killed, addressed it. I believe we're going to see a video that talks of it, but my black people, it is important that we move from I have a dream type of speeches from Martin Luther King to speeches such as I'm Black and Proud by Martin Luther King. That evolution of mindset has to be part of us, that we teach our own and we pass on to our children. It is necessary to break out of that religious trauma, because it's not just religious. It is a racial psychotherapy that we must do upon ourselves to free the shackles of the mind. I don't think Black people can understand how important what I'm saying is. But 2 years ago, women in the United States, the right to abortion that was taken for granted at the federal level got lost by a very conservative white supremacist Supreme Court, put there by a certain Trump. 2 years ago, the right to abortion. I dare to ask a question to our Black people. If whites right now were to decide to reestablish slavery and or colonization, or even segregation, and for those who think Black Wall Street was not the norm, even under segregation. So let's be honest. If whites of the world, white Europeans, white Arabs, white Jews, Aryans, wanted to reestablish slavery and colonization, what could Black people really do to prevent it? For those who don't know, practically all African armies are trained by white, European, and or Arab armies. Africa is the only continent that doesn't have the nuclear weapon. When I say the only continent, don't get it twisted. There are no nuclear weapons in South America, but the Monroe Doctrine makes it that all of the Americas are under American hegemony, USA. Meanwhile, Oceania, Australia, and New Zealand are part of the Five Eyes, aka USA, Great Britain, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand defense system. So they're protected. If there was a world war, there are no nuclear weapons in Africa. Why could Africa? Why could the Black nations of the Caribbean? Why could Black communities in the world that we live in today, apparently of integration, what could we really do if the white nations of this world decided to reestablish slavery and colonization?
It's really heavy when you really look at the power structure and what it is. And the other thing is what we should be doing or could be doing. And I think breaking away or being able to at least get an understanding when it comes to religious trauma and the history of this religion. And for people in America, we can simply talk about Christianity as a whole, Catholicism, not let alone when we start thinking about Christian nationalism and what that represents today and how it is used. It is used against us. It is used to make us believe. And I think it's one of the biggest weapons that is being used in the world today. I was just going over talking about expanded consciousness, and there was a post going out talking about Elon Musk, talking about an Oreo cookie and how the Oreo cookie has a demonic satanic mark. And long story short, it's Nabisco. It goes back way before that was even that considered that mark. And if you do even deeper research, you'll see that Elon Musk may have a vendetta against Nabisco and Oreo because they pulled their advertising dollars 2 years ago from his organization, Twitter, formerly known as known as X, and that power and control. And even if you look at one of the most powerful things, I would say, possibly in America, um, which is, of course, we know our entertainment, but one of the most powerful things in the world is religion, financially.
Religion is the most powerful ideology created by humans. You can kill people with a gun. You can kill people because they're hungry. But killing people in the name of an ideology, how can I put it? The vast majority of humans are rational. They function on the notion of resources and survival of the group. AKA, I can hate you, but do you have resources that can help me? This needs to change. Religion basically goes over the subconscious aspect of the human mind in an attempt, and I say attempt because it's actually false, to answer to the existential crisis of human existence. So it's really centered on three questions. And this is really here where we're talking about the psychology of religion. And it's this is where people, when we're talking about religious trauma, but it's also the religious trap. The religious trap, which is centered on fear, ignorance, and control. So the three central questions, they're called um, existential questions of humanity. Number one, where do we come from? Number two, what is our purpose here? And number three, where are we going after this? Religion claims to provide answers. Meanwhile, and this is where there is the NOMA principle, non-overlapping magisteria, where science and religion are truly disconnected because religion tries to answer these metaphysical questions, aka belief and absolute belief gives you that sense of righteousness and being right. Science seeks factual answers. This is why science always functions on the logic of this is the answer until a better answer comes. Meanwhile, religion does not try to reform itself because ultimately it claims, and you will see this very often. I mean, I can give you this as an example. Brother Malachi, speak to very religious people and you ask them questions that don't need to be difficult, that can be just pure common sense, pure scientific basis. You will notice the less they know, the more likely they will claim God or the Bible
Mm.
says. I give you two perfect examples here with two Africans, because you have to understand the level of indoctrination of some Africans. Where does the rain come from? What creates rainbows? Instead of saying, I do not know, please tell me. God must have created them. God didn't create the rain. God didn't create the rainbow. Humans created gods. So, in this age of STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, but truly in this age of mass information and mass education, doubt, access to knowledge, aka such as the internet, but also learning more about sciences, multiple sciences, including history, sociology, and ultimately the fact of living in societies where you can dare to ask the question of confronting your ignorance. Those are the worst enemies for religion. This is why the more developed a society is in terms of um, resources, aka people are less likely to die of hunger, the more peaceful a society is, and ultimately, And this is very important, notably for our brothers who are fan of a certain Kevin Samuels. The more educated women are, the less religious the society and the community. And the reason for this is because people live less in fear, they live less in ignorance, and as such, you become less able to control them by manipulating them. That's the reason why it's important that we understand these in order to free our minds. Poverty, mass ignorance need greater control. And this is notably what permits for Black people to be the most religious, those who pray the most, those who fast the most, and yet those who are the poorest, those who are the most disrespected, those who are the most victims of racism and discrimination on the four corners of the world. I mean, there is anti-Black racism even in indigenous communities, by the way, for those who forget. I mean, the 5 civilized tribes in the United States were called civilized because they had Black slaves. I mean, my Black people will love to claim indigenous ancestry. You know, I got Indian hair. Now you don't. And if you do, you might want to check if you know the descendant of the Black person the Indians enslaved. I didn't want to misunderstand me. I'm obviously not saying all indigenous tribes enslaved Black peoples. But the real shackles are on the mind, because once you have, and this is what I teach, this is what I teach in child welfare, just as in other professional sectors. I don't teach EDI per se, equity, diversity, and inclusivity. I teach power relations. I teach the notions of force and power upon humans and the mind, and how to deconstruct them for people to become free. Once you understand that these are social constructions, once you understand that 300 years of domination by our ancestors of Kemet upon the Canaanites is what led to the creation, notably, of pieces of paper called the Torah, and that a Roman, in order to have power, saw fit to use this growing sect and to claim it as its own, aka Constantine, and he became a convenient tool. I mean, we just need to go back 2,000 years ago. The Roman intellectual and senator Seneca who clearly said it. Religion is a tool for the powerful and the wealthy. It's a tool of study for the wise, but it's something to believe in for the masses. Just as 1800 years later, Karl Marx saying religion is the opium of the people. You can control people with religion, but these are all social constructs. Today, we have people who are watching Marvel movies. 1,000 years ago, Thor was not just some guy holding a hammer. He was considered a god, and people were killed in the name of Thor and his father Odin. I'm sorry for my Black Christian brothers and sisters. In 1,000 years, or maybe 2 or 3,000 years, Jesus Christ will be in the same place where today you see Thor, a fictional mythological figure, character in some movie, etc., etc., etc. Thor, Zeus, today we see them in movies, Disney, whatever. They were considered gods not long ago.
If you even go back on the history of Jesus, there's a lot of stories upon stories upon stories.
Well, this tends to upset people.
Yeah.
We need to have the true conversation here. Jesus Christ that people read about in the Bible did not exist. It doesn't matter that you take King James Version or Louis II for those who read French. Jesus Christ in the no matter how you want to claim to believe, you want to argue it, born from a virgin by a Holy Spirit, that's belief. Multiplying wine and bread, walking on water, that's belief. Resurrecting from the dead, that's belief. If you look at in the human experience, the characters who are written about to have had these experiences, they're all called gods. And I don't see any Christian saying, I believe in Jesus Christ. Oh, I also believe in Mitra. And yet it's similar. I don't hear Christians saying, I believe in Jesus Christ. And I also believe in Horus. And yet there are similarities. So these are beliefs. These are mythology. Absolutely. I will tell this. So it's important that notably as Black people, we stop spreading certain lies. As I said, for example, Ethiopia was not the first Christian state in the world. Ethiopia became Christian in 330 because the Negus, aka Emperor Ezana, result of his preceptor Frumentius, a white Syrian Lebanese, imposed Christianity, aka imposed means by the sword, forced the Ethiopians to become Christians. They were not Christians before. This was 5 years after the Council of Nicaea. Another thing is Jesus Christ, yes, has been inspired by a preacher who lived 2,000 years ago. In a time where there were many preachers, in a time that was called a messianic times. This is a common feature of Jewish history where a little bit more than 100 years after the Maccabean revolt from the Greeks, occupiers, and then the Maccabeans. So this is in the New Testament. It's not in the Ancient Testament because the Ancient Testament was already written before the Maccabeans. The New Testament was written after the Maccabeans. So the Maccabeans reestablished a Jewish kingdom. It's also the time when ultimately, a little shocker for our people, Yahweh, the God of the Jewish people, used to have a wife. He was not the one God. He was the one God with his wife, Asherah. Through the Maccabean revolt came the conclusion of Yahweh as the one and only God. No longer did Yahweh have a wife. And this mentality evolved not to be in the New Testament of that one mainly God, etc., etc. And then what the things that you end up having is that you have a new colonizer, a new invader in the Romans. And what happens? You have a messianic times, the arrival of the Messiah. It's in that context that you did have preachers. And yes, there is a man who inspired the Jesus Christ in the Bible. But I will challenge anyone. Look, there's no need to challenge. The scientific name is called parthenogenesis. It doesn't exist among humans. It's like humans growing wings and being able to fly, like you see in X-Men. It doesn't exist. You can believe it all you want. It doesn't exist. Just like a talking snake. Snakes cannot talk. It's not, you can believe all you want. But in the world of facts, snakes cannot talk because they do not have the organs that would permit for them to be able to create speech. Even parrots actually don't talk. They repeat sounds. The ignorance of science is crippling the Black community and permits for more religiosity due to ignorance, due to fear and control. So a preacher inspired the Jesus Christ. That's why it said That's why more and more of the myth, so there's a myth movement. A man inspired the creation of the myth of Jesus Christ. There's no one born from a virgin by the Holy Spirit will multiply the wines and rose from the dead. This is just creations as happened in other places, such as the story of uh, Ashoka Maurya, switching from Hinduism to Buddhism and becoming seen as enlightened. Siddhartha Gautama, Buddha. Our Christian people want to believe that Jesus Christ is real, but all the others will share the similarities. We're not. I mean, just look behind me. If Martin Luther King, but also Bob Marley had existed 2,000 or 3,000 years ago, they would have been deemed as God. As we know them today, this, at least Mandela, Bob Marley, and Martin Luther King, if they had existed 2,000 to 3,000 or 5,000 years ago, they would have been deemed God. About 4,000 years ago, there is a black man who lived in Africa. His intelligence was such, the ancient Greeks, whites, made him a god. You know his name, Malachi. The people who are listening to us know his name. They just don't know he was turned into a god by the ancient Greeks. Imhotep, the first polymath of humanity.
Yeah.
The polymath, genius in multiple domains. The creator,
Yeah.
of the first pyramid, the step pyramid. Imhotep was deemed such a genius. He was turned into a god by the ancient Greeks.
Mhm.
He is the god behind, he is the human behind the god of medicine, Asclepios.
Yes.
That's why you have the symbol of the staff with the snake.
Yep.
That comes from Africa. Herodotus, the father of history of the ancient Greeks, wrote himself, the gods of the Greeks that we see as white originate from Africa. Zeus and Osiris. And then they just mold them to the culture. Even when we look at things such as, I don't want to go too much into Greek mythology, but even when we look at things such as Medusa, behind Medusa is a Libyan princess. Libyan princess who refused the advances of Poseidon. That story hides the fact of what happened of the Greeks establishing colonies in northern Africa, the rape of the African woman, the taking of lands. So at the same time, this is that kind of ignorance that is trapping us, that is making for our people to become vulnerable, where we become members of blind faith into the ideologies of the people who oppressed our ancestors, and we shun what looks like us. Let's imagine a world, a different reality where whites would reject the ancestors, the Druids, Thor, Odin, etc., and they would be praying to Mami Wata. They would be praying to the Orishas. They would be calling each other Kofi and other African names. They would be dressing as Africans, and white men would be lusting, notably white, rich, white entertainers, white professionals would be lusting after black females. We have a hard time imagining that, right? And yet, 3,500 years ago, that's what was the case in Canaan. This is where notably the nomenclature, the way people construct their names in the Western world, it comes from Africa. It comes from ancient Egypt. This is where, when they dig in Israel, the so in archaeology, notably biblical archaeology, the further down you dig, the further you go back in time, because usually human communities kind of like build on top of one another. So the further down in the ground you're able to dig, the further you go back in the past. They always come back to ancient Egypt. They always come back to that period of occupation of colonizer, where it was the ancient Egyptian, the Kamites, who were the ones who occupied the land.
Beautiful. Man, I'm getting some questions. We'll get to those. What happens? I mean, because within America and the establishment of Jesus, the true establishment of of Christianity, removing, there was in your presentation, I believe there was a part that you had where the white, the black people were introduced to Christianity. That was one thing that they got to do, but it was a part in there where there was a white man or white person that would govern the way that you could do religion. I mean, the way that, yeah, the way you could actually, they wanted to shout and dance, but explain some of that history that you would know.
The overseer. So, and this is very, so this is really, this happened very much in the USA, far less in Canada because Canada is colder. So there was less incentives to have black slaves, but Canada had indigenous slaves, the Shawnee, and black slaves, notably from Africa, that were brought here. But when you look at, for example, the US, and notably Brazil, and I will often mention Brazil, my black people, you want to know about the kidnapping and enslavement of Africans, aka of our people, into the Americas. Dr. Henry Louis Gates of Harvard, that some of you may know because of the DNA test to celebrities, he cried when he went to Brazil when he was made aware of how horrible. I hate to make this comparison, but slavery in Brazil was way worse than in the United States. Way worse, no comparison. The part that Brother Malachi is asking is here where the slave masters, the white slave masters, and FYI in the US, it came to be up to 1/3 of the slave masters were actually women, white women. Perfect example, Martha Washington, the wife of first President George Washington, as they couldn't have children, the slaves, who were the slaves of Martha, all got the last name Washington. That's why, think about all the celebrities you can think of named Washington, you get it. The slaves were allowed to commune, to celebrate a form of Christianity that would also mix in elements of the African spirituality. And this is notably something that you will see in our black churches with the celebration, the singing, the dancing, which is, to use a language of white people, louder, more expressive, etc., etc. But you had the white overseer. You had the white person making sure that it was still within the limits of whiteness to remain in power, to notably avoid what could lead to a revolution. This is what happened in Haiti. And this is what, notably in Brazil, led to the creations of quilombos, the quilombos such as Quilombo dos Palmares with Zumbi. Fascinating story, just as Nat Turner in the United States. Black boys who grew up in the church who saw the disconnect between the claims of a book said to be a holy book, a religion claiming to be about peace and love, and yet the mistreatment upon people who look like them. The overseer, the white overseer to the black communion of religion, was there to make sure nothing got out of line. that the very message, this is part of the reason why blacks were not allowed to read, that there was still this notion that the black experience under slavery, they're waiting for a Moses was going to save them because they're the people of God, aka they're cursed. But if you are a good slave, and there's a part of that in the Bible in terms of slaves, obey your masters as you would obey Christ. The conditioning of the black mind to become subservient, to accept its fate, to live in hope. But fortunately, not all bought that lie, because the white church will give a certain reading of the Bible, the black church would give a different reading of the Bible. This is very much purposefully. So, yeah, it's the white overseer. Another example is how the Afro-Brazilian martial arts of capoeira, if you look at videos of capoeira, it's the Jinga and the two styles of Angola and Regional. The Jinga Regional, I think that's the name of the other genre. I might be wrong, so I apologize. I've done capoeira over 20 years now, 25, 26 years ago. But the two styles of capoeira were disguised as dances, and yet it was an African martial arts to defend themselves when they would go off, escaping for freedom to the Quimbos, to be able to fight off the slave masters, the slave catchers, and notably to defend themselves, including from the horses and the dogs. So, yeah.
Wow, that's powerful. That's a whole nother conversation looking at a lot of people probably don't understand martial arts. It's an art of moving the body in defense of and protect.
Martial arts is very spiritual, and this is not just, people think of Kung Fu. Say Kung Fu, the real name is Kung Fu with a G. People think of Kung Fu, but Kung Fu, karate, taekwondo, Muay Thai, the art of the eight limbs, capoeira. Martial arts is very. My baby brother, as you mentioned, I had the honor to represent Canada in martial arts, but how can I put it? When my baby brother wanted to learn martial arts from me, the fighting part did not move him. It was the spiritual part, and that spiritual teaching I gave him was basically the start of his journey into becoming today a yogi, becoming a yogi in the yoga community. Yeah. So yeah, spirituality is very present in martial arts, very present.
We'll definitely go and have more conversations, especially when we start getting into levels of spirituality and connection. I think as people, there's so many various comments and I think we have such a deep tie to religion, i.e. in America, specifically Christianity, and then if you're black, the black church, that it's very difficult for us to even explore the idea, right, of whether it would where a person would have this Jesus character, or whether a person would have the church. And there's hundreds of years of establishment, especially the last 150 years. My father's a pastor, but I went to Christian schools, but the last 150 years in America specifically, we have developed an entire industry when it comes to gospel music, when it comes to the expression of who we are and the songs that we have we've created these songs about this deity, this character, right? That we come together to actually very, very few people, I would say, do a lot of the Jesus thing, the church thing, right, on their own and not express it outwardly, right, to another individual. And the where I would like to go real quick, so people would get a little bit of this talk that you had. We talked before, and then I'm gonna get to some questions. But you tapped on it a little bit, but it was like the three cancers of the Black psyche,
Mm.
and I think that just a little bit on that. So that we know where we're going, we know what to do. It's one thing to talk about religion, talk about religious trauma, but then a lot of people will be left without anything because of the lack of understanding, the lack of true knowledge, and the lack of being able to connect within themselves and the power within themselves and all the ancestors and things that we have that would still connect it, be alive within us, if you will, right? You can see your face, you see your nose. Your nose comes from somebody, right? Your structure of who you are comes from somebody within your lineage, right? Your brain and your thoughts can come from something in somebody. But the three C's, I mean, I'm sorry, the three cancers of Black psyche.
Mhm. It's really hard for our people to, and I'm speaking, of course, in general. I am not speaking
Yeah,
of each individual per se. Please, we are talking about group dynamics
yeah,
over here. As Black people, as I've said before, the shackles are in the mind. They are no longer physical. But what ends up happening is that what I've come to coin as the three cancers of the Black psyche: entertainment, consumerism, and religion. We have talked a lot about religion. Religion is the ultimate cancer, but at the basis of it, the most commonly seen cancer is entertainment. No, I'm not here to bash entertainment. As I've said, we are the people of Michael Jordan and Michael Jackson, just as we have all these talented uh, African football players on this part of the ocean. You say it's soccer, but football. But we are overvalued in entertainment. And what it does is that it crushes our potential of being more than just entertainers for too many of us. As I gave so many conferences in high schools, every time I would ask the youth, Black, white, Asian, indigenous youth, etc., Arab youth, to name in 1 or 2 minutes as many rich and famous white people they could that had a diversity of occupations. When I would ask them to name rich and famous Blacks, they didn't need a minute or two to figure out that the vast majority were entertainers. Sure, Obama is not an entertainer, but I had to remind them that Oprah is an entertainer. That's entertainment. Our people are being made brain dead by entertainment, stupid entertainment, non constructive entertainment. And we don't have the entertainers of the past who stood up for social justice, who risked their lives. And yes, Muhammad Ali, but how many Black athletes were supporting Colin Kaepernick when he put his knee down? That speaks to us. The majority of football players who are Black, but they couldn't support Colin Kaepernick was too rights. because they're looking for a paycheck from a white team owner? Why is it that LeBron and others didn't put the NBA on strike or lockdown after the racist Clippers owners' comments came out? Why do we have so many black athletes complaining of racism in football in Europe, but also here in the Americas, and they're unwilling to boycott? And I say unwilling, I didn't say unable. We are a black community that 70 years ago, 1955, a 29-year-old led the boycott of the bus system in Montgomery, which was the second reason. The first reason was Emmett Till, by the way. The second reason to start the civil rights movement. Our hero, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. 70 years later, in the name of integration, black people are unable to boycott anything. Boycott anything. H&M, Monkey in the Jungle shirt versus Explorer shirt for the white kid. Black people get upset, hyper emotive, boycott, aka capitalism, the dollar. Our people are being made brain dead by entertainment. Consumerism. We are all consumers, notably in the capitalist world, but we cannot deny the fact of the sheer economic power of the African American community is literally being washed away by the lack of a community consciousness to put together its money and organize itself. I'm saying African American because the African American is the number one black in the world in which America is the number one power. If today China becomes the number one power, the blacks in Guangzhou, the number one black / African community in Asia, will take on a different spotlight, as they will be the blacks of the new power, aka China. So, as we are still in the world of under American hegemony, notably cultural hegemony, it is very sad and pathetic to see how far too many of our black Americans, obviously, how far too many of our black people literally make themselves weak with money. I'm talking about the entertainers who waste millions of dollars, just as studies tell us. What is it again? 70 to 80% of NBA players become broke 3 to 5 years after retirement. Talking about a black community where we have the same black people who rightfully complain about life being so expensive, and yet are going to buy the latest Nikes or Jordans, are going to go to the strip club, or are going to buy weaves and wigs as if they don't have their own natural hair. Oh, I know this can be quite upsetting, but it has to hurt. It has to hurt in order for us to heal. We waste our money. We waste our precious dollar. We have our black people who literally will always have money to travel around the world and to go so many times to the Caribbean or some exotic destination, whether it be for whatever you want to call it, notably sex with a local woman, but they will never set foot in Africa. They will never do a DNA test to be able to tell the children, this is where we come from in Africa. This is the name of our ethnicity. For those who have never been in Africa or haven't done the DNA test, don't get it twisted. In Africa, and I'm really saying this, on the four corners of Africa. Ethnicity that matters. So that 23andMe, whatever white company test that will tell country, no. I strongly encourage to do the African American, to use the African American company, AfricanAncestry.com, that will reveal to you the ethnicity of your ancestors. And I say this with proof. 6 years ago, 2018, I took back to Africa, to Cameroon, to the Bamileke people, an Afro descendant from Haiti who was determined to be of Bamileke descent. How could we believe it? When we got to the center of the city to meet the king, the young Haitian man I brought is 6'10". The king is 6'7", 6'8". They look like one another, like father and son. And the last slave ship to have left Bimbia in Cameroon, it had been at least 200 to 250 years. More than 200 years, because it was 2018. So the last slave ship must have left for Saint-Domingue in the early 1790s, because then the French Revolution, as I said earlier, abolished slavery. Consumerism, our Black community wastes money. Meanwhile, the dollar doesn't stay long in the Black community. Meanwhile, you have other communities, such as the Jewish and Chinese communities, the money circulates among them. And then ultimately, we have religion, the loss of identity, the false belief that we can be seen as equal and accepted as equal while we are praying to the gods and ideologies of the people of the descendants of the people who oppressed us and will still oppress us through systemic racism. And I go back to Martin Luther King, who clearly talked. He had a speech, which I had in my presentation, the most racist hour in America, Sunday morning at 10 a.m., whites going to overwhelmingly white churches, blacks going to overwhelmingly Black churches. But still, even in language, and Brother Malachi, please, we have to, I think it's a good time to share that video of Brother Martin Luther King, the 1967 speech, "I'm Black and proud and beautiful." Religion. So for those who may be bothered by what I'm saying, let us hear from our own brother, our hero, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, 1967. This is not "I Have a Dream" from 1963. This is 1967. "I'm Black and proud and beautiful." I make my 3-year-old daughter repeat this. Please, brother, go ahead.
Don't let anybody take your manhood. Be proud of our heritage. As somebody said earlier tonight, we don't have anything to be ashamed of. Somebody told a lie one day. They couched it in language. They made everything black, ugly, and evil. Look in your dictionary and see the synonyms of the word black. It's always something degrading and low and sinister. Look at the word white. It's always something pure, high, and clean. I want to get the language so right that everybody here will cry out, "Yes, I'm Black. I'm proud of it. I'm Black and beautiful."
Thank you. I want our Black people to understand, when I say religion is the worst cancer of the Black psyche, this is not an attack on religion. Don't get me wrong. I went to religious school, Catholic school. I had a great experience there. I'm also a consultant for the French Catholic School Board, the largest school board in Canada outside of Montreal. I am not being a hypocrite here. This is not a secret. Our daughter, we have put our daughter in Catholic school because they have the best education system. But this is where it's important to understand, because I said I've been a consultant. This is the French Catholic board that has, following the senior leaders consulting with me, having really an open mind. Please be ready for what I'm going to say here. They have done work, and yes, they're white, and you will have, there is one or two black people. Yes, they have integrated an anti-black racism statement to be read at the meetings and the board, because they have such a high number of black students. They have embraced the LGBTQ flag. This is a very progressive Catholic school board. If not, I wouldn't have put my daughter there. If not, I wouldn't be praising their efforts, not just because I am one of the consultants. When I say religion as the worst cancer of the black psyche, understand, my brothers and sisters who are viewing this. Today, June 27, 2024, in 50 years or 100 years, please understand, we live in a world in which those so-called universal religions are basically social construct upon which, as you just heard from Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., look in your dictionaries, everything adjective to blackness is seen as negative, while everything associated to whiteness is seen as positive. This becomes psychological conditioning upon those of black skin to view themselves as inferiors and negative. It is not an accident if we go back to the first cancer of the black psyche, the greatest entertainer in this world, Michael Jackson, went to bleach his skin. Do not give me that BS about vitiligo that changed his skin. It became a choice. The vast majority of people who have vitiligo don't become white and don't change their features and their lips and their nose, aka erasing their blackness. Love Michael Jackson. We miss him. We miss his music. But we have to stop lying to ourselves. The brother had an identity issue. He dreamed, he wished he could be white. Those 3 kids that he had by surrogate parents, they're not biologically his kids. They're white as snow. And I have nothing against his children. I'm glad these 3 kids had a man who loved them, have a family, a black family that welcomes them. But Paris Jackson, stop saying you're a black woman, because you're not a black woman. No, we have to say it.
Yes.
I want to see that black child who goes around, that black child adopted by Madonna going around saying that, hey, I'm white because Madonna adopted me. Nobody would take him seriously.
No.
Exactly. Let us dare to speak the truth. Because, and as I said in my presentation, the worst case of racial alienation, my black people, there are people who look like us, indigenous blacks in the Pacific Islands of Vanuatu. They have been so effectively brainwashed by white people. They consider the royal British family to be gods. Prince Philip, Queen Elizabeth who died, to be gods, and as such, the children, Williams, to be gods. The cargo cults, allow me not to do all the explaining of how it came to be, but we have people who look like us, black indigenous people, who have been so effectively brainwashed that even the militant atheist Richard Dawkins came to the conclusion that it is best to leave them in their ignorance, because revealing the truth to them might lead to mass suicides.
No.
How many of our black people know this? Show me those white people who look at a black person as a god, when we live in a world where So many white people love to tell us that they love Obama, they love Mandela. You know, those two African sounding names, right? Very African sounding names. Black people, please show me all these white kids who have been born and first name is Mandela or first name is Obama. Show me those kids. Where are they?
Mm. Mm. So many truths, and the difficulty of realizing it, seeing it, connecting to it, questioning it, and what to do about it. One thing you said about the entertainers, when we were talking, it's like, one thing you said is we are more. It's okay. We need, you said we need more. We can have more. But the thing is, what do we do? How do we reverse it? How do we change? And one of the things you said is, it was talking about we are more. We are more than just
I don't want to live in a world without entertainment.
correct.
But dumb entertainment, especially when you are part of a marginalized community identity that further marginalizes itself.
Yeah.
It is not an accident that we see so many black athletes, notably football players. We've seen those photos. They all have white wives.
Yeah.
It's not a show me that white team that they all have black girlfriends or black wives. It doesn't exist.
No.
So it's not entertainment in terms of entertainment. It's the overvaluing, but also the environment, the construction that comes with it in terms of the reflections of success.
Mm.
Barack Obama said it himself. He understood in his mid-20s that if he wanted to succeed, he had to stop dating white women. Brother Malachi, my father, my parents, even my mixed aunt were telling me as a teenager and early adults, 18, 19, 20s, not to be with a white woman.
Mm.
Of course, I didn't listen. Yes, I've had white girlfriends, but you see, my mid-20s, it's a white priest will explain to me and made me understand why it would never work.
Mm.
It's a white priest who worked in Africa. He told me, you do not have the mindset to have a successful relationship with a white woman. This is not racist.
Yeah.
You've heard me talk. Our people have heard me talk. Let me tell you, it was one of the most common questions teenagers here in Ottawa in the four school systems, school boards, French and English, Catholic and public. They would always ask me at the end of presenting on racism, Mr. César, do you have a white wife? Because for them, it was a matter of credibility of my speech and my private life. You've heard me speak for 2 hours. How many black women would take me seriously if I said I have a white wife right now?
None.
Let's keep it real. Obama understood this in his mid-20s, the nature of his ambitions, and Obama was not there talking radical with his fist up. We know how he did wrong, Brother Jeremiah, right? In order for him to get some white votes.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
So this is not something radical. This is the reality of the world that we live in which in Africa you find African black presidents with white wives. Show me one Asian leader, one European leader with a black wife. One leader of a Western nation from Canada up north to Brazil down south. Show me one white, Asian, Arab, non-black leader was a black wife. But in Africa, you will find black presidents with white wives. It's not about being against interracial relationships. My baby sister is mixed. My wife is African American. She's mixed. My daughter is light skinned. When I walk with her, people think her mother is white. But we must not deny to ourselves the truth about the power relations that we live in. And this is where entertainment, consumerism, and religion come into play. We love to fool ourselves. But if I give you a perfect example, 2 years ago, Roe versus Wade was repealed. A logical step of a Christian fascist state would be to also repeal Loving versus Virginia. I don't know if everybody knows what Loving versus Virginia led to. The legalization of interracial relationships. What would happen to Supreme Court Clarence Thomas? He has a white wife. How many of our brothers, if we lived in a Christian fascist state, or if we lived in the age of segregation, how many of our brothers, and more sisters, let's be honest, how many would risk their lives to be in an interracial relationship? Because at the same time, how many white entertainers and white leaders are having a black wife? Bill de Blasio was mayor of New York. He was an exception, the exception that proves the norm. That's all it is.
So surreal. I mean, whenever I think about my own life, I was born in Kansas, 1976, and Brown versus Board of Education happened in the state of Kansas. So I grew up, and by the time my wife is white, but it's weird because there's a like you have mixed biracial. Heck, I look at my own life and how biracial, technically African Americans don't even realize how biracial that they truly are. Like I just, the only test I've done was the ancestry, and it just comes up and it shows, European descent throughout the whole thing. But at the same time, my last name is Gross, is German Jewish.
German Jewish, yeah.
And that we come from Mississippi, and we literally have slave owners to white people and Asian people within my family. So we might tap a little bit into epigenetics, but I just remember in 1976, by the time I talked to my father-in-law, who is a behavioral psychologist, because he's a behavioral psychologist with a emphasis of understanding mental retardation and just human development, child development. So he's really, really deep into this development of who we are, but he would ask us questions, not necessarily questions. He said, there's things you may face or deal with, or things you may experience with interracial relationships. But ultimately, I remember from the time that I was born, right, and being 3, you are integrated, and it was almost like you were force integrated in assimilation, right? If people don't understand, like, the way I talk, the way I move, I know the game. I was born into the game.
But if I can put it to you like this, it is not that they can't understand. You see, this is where epigenetics and Dr. Joyce DeGruy, PTSS, post-traumatic slave syndrome, come into play. So what happens is here a matter of healing. The more you embrace your blackness in a world of integration, in a culture of integration, the more you embrace your blackness and you dare to be unapologetically black, the more you seem weird, odd, different. Something must be wrong with you to the other black people. Tomorrow, as I'm taking my family to the funeral of my friend, we are not wearing black. I told my wife, we do not wear black for funerals. We are wearing white, because that's what it is in terms of a black spirituality, but truly the spirituality of the world. Dare to be black, unapologetically black. You will lose friends. And not just white friends, because it's easy to think, oh, well, No, even you will lose black friends.
Mm.
You will have some black relatives who will start to look at you like he's getting a little bit too deep. That face is going a little bit too high there. Like, stay with us, bring it back down. You know what I mean? I always tell people, and you hear, I'm a regional director, consultants. I'm there in the universities and schools. My fist is up there, but I also have a hand that's open for shaking. You gotta be able to be true to your identity. I present with my traditional hat. The photos are there. I'm interviewed in media. I have an eye condition. I don't take off my shades and risk burning my eyes and going blind just to please white ethics of image. My traditional earrings, I'm a Sawa. My traditional earrings are there. I'm not taking off my Koris just to look professional. And I wear my African outfits in presentations, as in conferences. Dare to be unapologetically black so that you can heal, so that you can be true to yourselves. I am not saying that everybody has to be a Pan Africanist. That would be beautiful. But that's not what I'm
Yeah.
saying. But I'm saying dare to be black. I don't care how light skin or dark skin you are. I don't care if you have uh, green eyes or you have dark eyes. I don't care if you have a white mama, a white dad, or you are one quarter. Like, dare to be unapologetically black. We are living in a world in
Mm.
which those white supremacists and notably Christian fascists are terrified of what all the statistics are saying. By the end of this century, 1/3 of humans will be Africans. I didn't say black, I said Africans. Considering that in the Americas, from Canada to Brazil, it's in Brazil that there's the most black people. The black population, and here in Brazil, you can see blonde hair and blue eyes, and the person will tell you I'm black, and they have a black mom or black grandma to prove it for you. Even me, football, soccer is my favorite sport. Cristiano Ronaldo, that's my player. Real Madrid, Hala Madrid. Go look at what his grandmother looked like.
Mm.
She's black from Capo Verde. You know, that island where the Portuguese began the racial mixing. So they
Wow.
are living in a world in which their numbers are greatly diminishing as you hear about the declining birth rate in the Western world, but also in China. Japan is part of the West. And the booming demographics in Africa, especially those Black African nations that come with exploding demographics, is the growth of consciousness and the notion of power. That's why notably religion is used furthermore as a tool to control blacks. Those evangelicals and those black pastors who are nothing more than charlatans. They are charlatans. They become rich off the Bible upon poor Africans and poor blacks in the Americas. They are basically tools to keep our black people enslaved, colonized in the mind. Demographics is a tool of power. If you bring consciousness, you change the narrative. Tonight is the night of US presidential debate. My makeup, my intellectual makeup and education in history, politics, and religion would have me watch the debate and not take a moment with you and our black people to share knowledge.
Mm.
But when I'm able to do that, knowing I can catch the analysis, I can rewatch it, I am prioritizing my black people. That's the black consciousness that make it that those leaders on top of my head, this is what they died for.
Mm.
This is what they died for. If we cannot understand this, us as adults, we cannot pass it on to our children. We cannot pass it to our children. We have to understand our salvation is the creation of a better world for our children. And as such, we must decolonize our mind in order for them to be healthier. We don't have the excuse of chains. We don't have the excuse of segregation. We don't have the excuse. We are in those corporate jobs. Yes, there is still systemic racism. Microaggressions are still rampant. White supremacy is furthermore on the rise. Hopefully, it doesn't reach the level it was 100 years ago. But I'm from France. Sunday, there will be legislative elections for the National Assembly. The right-wing party of Rassemblement National, aka the National Front, might come to power for the first time. Donald Trump, despite being a convicted rapist, has close to 50% people willing to vote for him, despite decades of racism, aka the exonerated five, Central Park Five, racism in terms of housing. I am not a fan of Joe Biden, but I'm asking our black brothers and sisters who are willing to vote for him. You voting for a man who would have no second thoughts about sending you in jail and throwing away the key, unless you're basically cleaning his toilets where he takes a dump because that's where he sees you fit. So this is really what we're talking about in terms of decolonizing not only the mind, freeing our black consciousness, but truly honoring our ancestors to prepare a better future for our children. George Floyd is the tree that hides the forest. Sandra Bland is the tree that hides the forest. Tamir Rice and Trayvon Martin are trees that hide the forest of so many black men, black women, black children killed in a world of systemic racism where the cancers of entertainment, consumerism, and the worst of all, religion, are still colonizing our minds and still impacting our actions to remain oppressed. Ultimately, the solution is not them. My finger is pointed: whites, Indo-Europeans, Asians. Too many black people love blaming everyone. The whites, the Asian, the Arabs, the Indian, the aliens. Must be God, must be the devil. No, 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 no. My people, accountability. There are three fingers looking at us. Yes, systemic racism is real. Yes, the legacy of history, slavery, colonization, etc., etc. But what can we do to uplift our own? What must we do to uplift our own? Imagine if, and again, free promotion here, AfricanAncestry.com. Imagine if instead of wasting $300 to $500 US in a year, each black household would invest to do the DNA test from a black-owned DNA company so that on a map, they can know the country and the very ethnicity, and they start to look at what it looks like and the customs. The young man I brought to Africa in 2018 was adopted by the king. Looks like his son. Adopted by the king. He was given an African name, came back to Canada. He legally changed his name. Today, he lives in Africa. He has a business. He found a purpose to life. Oh, yes, he has a fiance too. When you know your identity, when you know where you come from, it helps you to know where you're going. It's very important. I cannot stress it enough. We are adults, or we comfort the stereotype of black people being eternal children, and as such, eternally oppressed.
We're gonna get quickly to some of these. Let's see. What about people?
And I apologize. I hope I'm not taking too long.
I knew it was
mindful.
going. I knew this was going to happen, right? Because I was like, people can click off or they can watch it, right? Joe Rogan goes for 3 hours. I don't even watch him. It's like when we see you talk about entertainment real quick, but it's like when I really truly think about it, it's like the people make so much off of the money, not the entertainers. The owners of these organizations make so
Oh
much.
yeah, yeah.
The TV stations make so much. All these people make so much. Black people in America essentially are coming into a lot of money, but it's like
That the community is weak. The community is the poorest because the wealth, because the money is individual.
yeah,
So it's like when Prince died. Suddenly, it was discovered that he was, giving and helping, organizations teach young blacks and brown kids how to code. Uh, Beyonce and Jay-Z, they actually help the community, but they keep it under the table. Why can't they just come out?
mm-hmm.
Can you imagine a black protest for social justice in New York or LA and Beyonce and Jay-Z or Snoop, 50 Cent come out to be part of the protest? Come on. You telling us that our people were more courageous 50, 60 years ago because it was segregation? Because it was colonization? And today people have become comfortable. Comfortable with what? Any day, any night, any of us black people can become the next George Floyd or the next Sandra Bland with no one to record it.
Yeah, no one to record it is big, which has been happening for years that people haven't been here to record it. The entertainment, just seeing how many negative things about each other, diss videos or your Cat Williams when he's talking about somebody. It's like these things go viral, and it's just us talking about us and
Black trauma is very lucrative. Black consciousness. You, life coach Malachi, your channel will never get as many hits as I don't
no,
remember the name, Shannon Sharp,
no.
whatever, Club Shisha, I think it's called.
No, it's not.
Exactly, because you're not there to go like, let's add to some drama. Let's put some pointless sex and this and that. And don't get me wrong. Just as I will criticize the Shaquille O'Neal for acting like a clown, Terry Crews acting like a stereotype, and so many others. And oh my God, I'm forgetting his name. He's short. I'm not even saying that as a diss. Kevin Hart for acting as a stereotype to they're behaving like that to make white people laugh because they're getting white money. It's from them that they're getting white money. It's like so many of our rappers doing a concert and the front rows are all full of white people. And then Kendrick Lamar surprises himself that a white girl comes on stage and starts rapping to one of his tunes and she says the N-word. And he's like, whoa, stop. But who's producing that N-word? We can't stand up to these music companies who say you will not profit of the negativity of our people.
Yeah. The Drake Kendrick Lamar situation is like they're sitting back, fight, but they're profiting.
I want to see a world in which we can see Celine Dion versus Shania Twain versus I don't know the names of Barbara Streisand going on a white woman's beef about who has a higher pitch tone or who sings the best a cappella to. We can't even imagine that. So yes, some people will say it's the culture of hip hop. I'm like, these dudes are in their late 30s and 40s. They're dads.
Yes.
What kind of example is that showing to our youth? It's like you should look this up. In France, a few years ago, I think 2021, there was a fight at the airport in Paris between Booba, Booba, the number one, the greatest rapper of the greatest French language rapper, versus Caris, Kaaris, one of his former protege who became independent. They're my age. I'm 45 years old. Booba is what? I think he's 2 years older than me. Caris is 44 years old. They have children. They were fighting at the airport like a high school gang fight. People recording and taking photos. It's as if me and you, my brother, we are there fighting at the airport and we have children. You have your platform, I have my platform. We are followed by X amount of people. And then we surprise ourselves, they don't take us seriously. But look at the behaviors of too many of our, I almost want to say representatives by default.
Yes.
They don't represent me,
Right.
but I'm from France. I'm black. By default, I will be associated to them.
Yes.
I want to see Jackie Chan and Lucy Liu start to fight at the airport. We can't imagine that. We can't imagine that.
Man, that's good. I'm gonna pick a couple of these questions out because I think they're good. Miss Dorothy here. Africans weren't the first Christians. Ethiopia just was the oldest version of the Bible. Nope, that's not a question. I want to make sure I get a question. That is
But the sister was right. Allow me to confirm the sister Dorothy, I believe. Yes. Respect to the knowledge. Share that knowledge, sister.
I want to. Well, she's one I'm very close to, and she's helping me with the book. But she's also writing a book on Black religious trauma, and she has quite a few. You know, here's one: how to get unstuck. She has quite a few.
Respect, sister. Respect. Much respect.
I will definitely introduce you two together because she has some powerful.
And we must not forget to address how to heal from Black religious trauma and what we can do. I'm not sure if I really address that beyond embracing your Blackness, but what does that mean? Like, and I don't want people to think, oh, is it just to wear African outfits or to celebrate Kwanzaa? I mean, I've talked about do the DNA test, yes. Celebrate Kwanzaa, yes. Learn about the African and when I say African, I'm talking African Americans, Afro Brazilians, Afro Mexican. How many of our people know the first Black hero of the Americas? I don't think anyone knows his name. Gaspar Yanga, Afro-Mexican leader. Gaspar Yanga. Absolutely. We need to know our heroes. We live in a world where all the white kids can tell you Alexander the Great, Napoleon, Hitler, and so many people will have done great and evil things, including Julius Caesar. And yet our Black kids don't know the heroes. They don't know what to answer. You ask a white child who was the greatest white conqueror, he can give you Alexander or Napoleon or whoever. You ask an Asian kid, he tell you Genghis Khan without hesitation. Ask a Black child, how many will be able to tell you Tutmosis? This is how you create inferiority complexes when someone doesn't have, in French it's called répartie, when you don't have the content to reply to your honor.
Are you seeing a collective change taking place in Black people worldwide regarding falsehoods presented by religion?
Excellent question. And brother, sorry, I don't have the first name, brother
Ruben.
Goff. Ruben? Brother Ruben, 100% yes. And I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Why? We're having this conversation. You are here with us. This is how we create the momentum in a society. Let me give you an example here. In 2009, in the summer, I stayed with, I was often with friends in a neighborhood of Montreal called Côte des Neiges. Very multi-ethnic, everything you want to call it. But you know something I noticed there? If you paid attention, it was on the Saturday mornings, you will see all the Jewish children going to the yeshiva, to the Jewish school. You had the Chinese centers where they would come bringing families and notably children to learn about Chinese history and culture. Us at Roots and Culture Canada, on Thursdays evening, We have our at-risk program for Black youth, so crime prevention, where we basically give them education. First of all, they get the basketball and whatever sports activities, they get food. Black Panthers mentality here. We are a Pan-Africanist organization, but they also get education, culture, and Black consciousness. Black people need to walk away from these white Indo-European ideologies of supremacy. You will never and you can never be respected being a descendant of the oppressed into the ideology of the oppressor. This is part of the reason why, as much as you hear people in the context of Israel versus Hamas or Israel and Palestine, as much as you hear about Israel or Zionists being white supremacists and all that, you will not find a Jewish people identifying as Nazi. It's an oxymoron that doesn't exist in the same way as you don't hear, and you will not find Chinese people in the Shinto faith. Black people are the only people who at large, and you look at the map of Africa, 90% of Africans are either Muslims, aka the white Arab Muslim ideology that has come as means of conquest to Africa since the year 639, or as Christians, the white European Christian ideology that has come since the Portuguese in 1443. And then we wonder why we can't be accepted. We can't be respected. Even 2009, when the king of Saudi Arabia wanted to bring in a Black imam in Mecca, the holiest city of Islam, he was rejected by the white Arabs. The king had to impose himself for him to be accepted. It was 2009 or 2012. So basically, yes, my Black people, we have to reject these ideologies. But we must never reject our people, because even as myself, I am a former Christian and I am a former Muslim convert. I rejected Islam in Egypt when I was invited by the Egyptian government, actually, to address Egyptology, Islam, and the Middle East geopolitics. It's in that trip, my first trip to Egypt, that I rejected Islam. I could not, in good faith, be in the ideology. I mean, they told me straight up, the elites over there, they told me, we see you Black people as entertainers, as poor, and in our religions. No. Religion will always, being in the religions of the descendants of the oppressors of our people will always be a constant struggle to fit in, and as such we create narratives. It's kind of like we're doing mental gymnastics to keep believing, while always being reminded that we are the strangers. And yes, we're having African pastors coming to America and Canada, in the churches, in the rural communities, to white communities who are looking at them like there's something wrong here.
Yeah, that you just answered that.
I'm a Pan-Africanist. I'm a spiritual people. So people think I'm an atheist. Technically, yes, they could think that, because I believe in nothing. I don't believe in God or God's religion. I don't believe in love. I don't believe in friendship. I know my wife loves me because I can prove factually that she loves me. I know I have friends. I don't need to believe I have friends. I know I do. This is the difference. When you believe, try it in any conversation. The moment you say you believe, what you're also saying is that you do not know. So either I know or I learn. It's that simple. I believe in nothing. Gods don't exist. I don't have to believe in religion, because religions are all man-made. The so-called, when T.D. Jakes is saying, God told me to tell you, God didn't tell him shit. Excuse my language. I hate when I hear that. This is an outright. I absolutely no. This really
Yes.
that sentence. God told me to tell you that so many black pastors and priests love saying to black people, and
Yes.
imams and black rabbis love saying it is absolutely a mind destroyer, because this is what religious trauma does. God told me, listen, people think I'm exaggerating here. Listen, in Africa, we have people who eat grass because the pastor told them, God told me to tell you.
Mm.
We had cases where we had sexual abuse and rapes right here in Canada, in Montreal. Today is Thursday. Monday, there was a show by my friend Kevin Calixte, of the KK show, KEKE space show. Look him up. Great guy. He addressed religion. Monday, he had a show on spiritual abuse, financial abuse, sexual abuse, etc. in churches in Montreal. God told me to tell you, we have African pastors who have fled from Canada, abandoning the family because they committed rapes and other financial abuse upon people. They took advantage of the minds, and the God told me to tell you.
Wow.
There's no God told me to tell you. There are men who wrote in those books in the time and space and culture. This is why the Ark of Noah didn't have penguins and kangaroos. Because
Mm.
2,500 years ago, those I didn't say five, those four men who wrote the Torah in the space of 70 years had never seen a penguin or kangaroo. Because how could they have seen a penguin or kangaroo in the Middle East?
Mm.
Australia was discovered by whites, aka James Cook, in the 18th century. They had no clue about the indigenous Americans. These are all fairy tales books that our black people have to heal from.
Mm.
God told me to tell you, TD Jakes, stop lying to our black people. I welcome a debate against TD Jakes, by the way. And I'm not saying that because I want his
This
$1 million off the Bible. But he needs to stop lying to our people. TD Jakes, Creflo Dollar, and all of them. I don't care about Joel Austin. He's not part of my people. But TD Jakes, Creflo Dollar, and all of them forces. But they're dumbing down our people, being charlatans. Because that's what they are. They're selling something false. They're enriching themselves of something false. God told me to tell you. God didn't tell you shit. No, God didn't tell you shit. I'm born in Africa. I'm born in a country, Cameroon, where we literally had, what's his name? Guy Parfait Esonge. A university professor will find a good gig to make more money. He suddenly claimed himself to be a prophet. And he had a following. He was he was a university professor, but he realized he would make more money with religion. And he worked.
Are we preconditioned for that? The epigenetics. I remember you had in your presentation, you're talking about Jews, Jewish men being almost like scared of German shepherds
Yes, yes.
and never even experience it based on epigenetics.
So the interesting part, very much, very interesting, and we're talking here about the neuroscience of religion here. So this may surprise people here. The human brain is conditioned to believe. The majority of humans need to believe. Belief is part of a survival process. The child needs to believe the parents in order to survive. The individual needs to believe the group in order to survive. We come from nomadic tribal societies where there was a need to believe in the leader, in the shaman, in the woman with the mysteries claiming the miracle baby came before agriculture led to the establishment of sedentary societies, leading to what more commonly is called civilization. Okay. But this is also where epigenetics come into play, because what ends up happening is that the trauma of the group becomes passed on down the generations as a survival method. It is absolutely not that the German Shepherd as an animal is wired to attack Jewish people, but in the collective consciousness of group identity, Jewish people, I'm speaking in general, obviously, Jewish people associate the German Shepherd to the extension of the oppression of the Nazi upon them. This is in the same way as when you look at Black people, dogs were used during slavery against Black people, notably slave catchers.
Mm.
Dogs were used during colonization. Dogs were used during segregation. Dogs were used during apartheid. Dogs are used by police. So there is time and again over generations and centuries a group collective narrative of dog as the extension of the oppression of whites, made worse when you understand that. And this is very important, what I'm going to reveal to our Black people here. I can't remember the specific date. It might be 1664, but towards the end of the 17th century, the most powerful man of Europe at the time, King Louis XIV, the Sun King of France, decreed le Code Noir, the Black Code that basically established the rules of the enslavement of Africans by whites. With one, there was a very important notion where the life of the slave, of the African, is similar to furniture. When furniture breaks, what do you do with it? You replace it. Most people don't try to repair furniture, they replace it. The slave that breaks, go get another slave. The life of the dog is more precious than the life of the slave. And we live in a society where Black people see time and again whites showing more love and affection and caring to the pets. Black people see whites behaving this way. Meanwhile, the dog, the extension of the Indo-European to conquer its environment, because the dog is the evolution of the weak wolves. The wolves that were too weak to survive in nature in the pack became close to the human Indo-European, and as such became its extension to conquer its space, to dominate its space. This was not the case in Africa. This is why you have, for example, go to the Caribbean or in Africa. Yeah, people have dogs, but these dogs, they survive. They find their own means. They sleep outside. They don't sleep on the bed. They don't lick people's faces. They're not seen as a family member. It's like, yeah, it's our dog. Nothing. Yeah, exactly.
A dog.
Exactly. There's no conception that we're going to go to a funeral of a dog and we're going to bury it and all. It doesn't make sense. These are cultural aspects. I am not saying this. We should not mock white people for such. We have to understand these differences. However, in understanding these differences, when you look at, and still talking about epigenetics, the relationship of the dog with whiteness. And notice something that happens with dogs. The more capitalistic a society becomes, the more it tries to reproduce the models of whiteness. This is where even the United Nations warned that planet Earth cannot survive if the rest of the world tries to adopt the cultural behaviors of the Western world. You look at China, we Chinese people tend to have dogs. Meanwhile, their grandparents didn't have dogs. And no, it's not true that all Chinese people ate dogs, but having a dog is Having a dog is a privilege, it's a luxury. Anyone who has a dog, please tell us truly how much you spend on your dog. You see what I mean? So it doesn't make sense in the Black community where people are financially struggling to waste money on a dog. It doesn't make sense in the Black community, notably Africans and Caribbeans, will have to send money back home to waste money on a dog. These are realities that whites don't deal with. And it definitely doesn't make sense to love dogs when, in the collective psyche of the Black race, you see dogs as extension of the oppression by whites in slavery, in colonization, in segregation, in apartheid, in police brutality, in prison. I mean, my household, there's no dogs. We have a neighbor. Our daughter plays sometimes with the daughter, blonde girl, blue eyes. I don't know, like little Barbie, and our daughter is scared of dogs, and the mother couldn't understand why. And I had to tell the mom, listen, the dog is not welcome in the house. There's no dog welcome. The only dog that's welcome is my aunt's dog because it's a service dog. Of course, service dogs. And let's be fair here. The issue is not the dog. Farm dogs, great dogs. You have rescue dogs, great dog. Like it's not the dog. It's a treatment of how one group of humans treat an animal versus how they treat other humans.
Human beings.
That's the problem. It's not the dog. So it's not the German Shepherd when you look at the Jewish people, just like it's not dogs when you look at Black people. It's the behavior, the treatment. Just as when we were talking about entertainment, the issue is not about having Black basketball players, just as it's not Black basketball, football, whatever players, just as it's not about a Black man marrying a white woman. The dynamics and the mindset behind it become the issue and the question to have.
Yes. Yes. Powerful, powerful, powerful conversation. And how do a person connect to you in terms of, because it's very rich. And I could probably do this honestly for a long time. And so
I'm honored.
How does a person be able to connect to you? I do know that I'll share the link on YouTube to his presentation. You can get it's of course, the religious trauma presentation that you have is a part of a larger religious trauma.
I don't know if we should share it because it's part of for the certification, right?
Yeah, well, they have that. They have just that part online, but you have to, in order to get the certification, one, you got to pay them, and two, you have to have all of the curriculum. That's just like one of the videos. It's on. It's openly on YouTube. But the one of the things is I'll probably share it just in case a person wants to see that. But if there's any kind of
my Facebook link. And my email.
And his Facebook that's what happens. His Facebook is on my Facebook, so you can click there and message him on his Facebook, and you can see his post on his Facebook page. It's an honor, and man, it's very rich. Well, definitely.
Yes, thank you. I use Facebook. I have Instagram and Twitter, but I'm so embarrassed to admit this. I am so not good at using Twitter and Instagram. I try to tell myself, listen, I'm a Facebooker. I've been there since 2007. I don't do TikTok. I just gave up on but no. Facebook is a great way to reach me. You have my email as well. And especially in terms of, kind of like you, my brother, Those sisters and brothers, let's work together. Let's give each other opportunities. Let us widen our platforms, and especially let us support one another. Brother Malachi, if you don't mind, let me give an example of what I'm saying, because when we're talking about healing from the religious trauma, it's ultimately about expanding our Black consciousness and creating stronger families, stronger
Mm.
communities, and stronger nations. I was invited to an event in the Jewish community here in Ottawa because I've done Jewish studies as well. And of course, the Middle East conflict, as you heard, notably when I was invited in Egypt by the government, blah, 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 blah. So I was invited at an event um, in the Jewish community. And when I came, event in the Jewish community, police as security, and it was an Asian. I don't know if he was Chinese, but he was an Asian security, a police officer. And I don't remember the specific words, but he basically wanted to make sure I'm at the right place because he told me that with me coming in, I would be the third minority. Him as police officer and inside a janitor. I am telling you, I can't remember how many people were there. I want a chance, maybe over 1,000 people. It was a sea of whiteness. And the black dot that I am, I mean, most people would agree that I'm a big guy. Let's put it this way. Uh, I was the only black person there. I was the only non-white person invited at the event. But you know what really shocked me the most is that they had Jewish people. This is Ottawa, the capital of Canada. They had Jewish people who drove and flew from New York, who flew from Vancouver, from LA to come attend this event. That's community support. The event was they brought in a Jewish celebrity who addressed the Middle East conflict, etc., etc. And I was telling myself, and I know people are going to say, Cesar, maybe you're taking it too far. We have a black people who will do that for Beyonce or Jay-Z or whoever. But how many will do that in the name of Pan Africanism? And this is not something impossible. So I'm not here saying things just to say them. No, it's not impossible. Just above my head, you see Malcolm X, aka Malcolm Little. His mother and his father, Mr. Little, where did they meet? They met in Montreal at a meeting of the UNIA of Marcus Garvey
Mm.
in the 20s. Yet they lived in the US. That's where Malcolm Little, aka Malcolm X, is born. So it's totally possible. It's the consciousness. It's the consciousness. It's the consciousness that makes it that we're here for 3 hours. It's the black pride.
Hmm.
We can honor our ancestors and prepare a better future for our descendants.
Absolutely. And I don't know, 20, I think I was in Montreal in 2017, and boy, a beautiful city. It wasn't winter.
Hold.
But so it was the summer, I think, of 20. I went there for doing some work. 2017. I really enjoyed my time when I went to Montreal. I knew I was like, I got to come back. But it's interesting, just looked it up of how many um, the Black Montreal experience and just how many the Black community of Montreal. Like it's very intriguing.
Mm.
Very intriguing. Wonderful experience and city. Is quite a difference than the U.S. Uh, and I was surprised how French it was. there in Montreal. It was just, you think Canada, but you don't think, wait, wow, this is intriguing. It's pretty interesting. I have on my Instagram, I have quite a few various Canadian followers and people. And so, but I appreciate you, man, for your
Thank you.
time,
Thank you.
for coming out. You guys, you go and you can hit him up on his Facebook page. I know you have some things to do tomorrow. I got a whole bunch of notes here. If you are just tapping in, tuning in, you got some rich content that would be hard to find anywhere. The PTSS, right? Post-traumatic slave syndrome. That is phenomenal. Looking at some of the indoctrinations and things that we have before us, and it makes it really difficult and hard for us to even think about questioning some of those things. But I think in truly expanding our consciousness, there's going to be some moments of being uncomfortable, right?
Absolutely.
It's going to be moments of, and you don't have to get everything. You don't have to take everything and see it for what it is. Like, take it, see it for what it is versus just needing to take it in. With the presidential debate and Trump and Biden tonight, it's like you have to go on there and you have to pick a side, and between which old white man that you want to choose. And my thing is you can let it go and leave it alone. Do what you got to do. Vote and just keep focusing on you. Keep focusing on turning to the self, the inner self, right? And it's crazy, brother, because in Oklahoma, I think I live in Black Wall Street, if you will, and they were voting on having the Bible in the literally making every school, the public schools have Bibles. And
But Brother Malachi, do our people realize that the Bible, the return of the Bible in schools, elementary, high school, and university, just as the ban of abortion, that's part of the white supremacist Christian fascist
yes,
narrative and plan to save the white race. This is not about Christianity per se. This is about saving the white race from this, growing number of non-whites.
the thing is
People have to understand this, and this is where when I talk about the three cancers of the black psyche, entertainment in terms of where we valued, consumerism in terms of we need to uplift ourselves socioeconomically because it's not going to get easier, and ultimately religion, we need to free our mind, our consciousness, so that we can truly uplift one another. I am not a proponent of all black people should go back to Africa. Hell no. Spread throughout the universe. But don't you dare spread and forget where you come from. This is Sankofa. Sankofa, keep going forward without forgetting where you come from. Like these election, my black people, black Americans, be really thoughtful when you go vote. This is, and I mean, I am not a Democrat for anyone who doubts it. I am not I don't ascribe to the white left versus right narratives. And listen, I make it simple. I support abortion rights. So if you think I'm left, I also support the death penalty. So I don't do left right. I'm a Pan-Africanist. But my black people in the United States, whether you be African Americans, descendants of slavery, etc., or whether you be American Africans, and thank you, Brother Malachi, because I'm going to use that difference. American Africans, so Americans will come from Africa or the Caribbean. When you go vote, be very conscious of this. This is not a simple election of which white face will be in the White House. It's truly which ideology will be in the White House.
It's a matter of time. It's a matter of time where we do our part, and that is even with picking these parties, right? We know that one party essentially really truly has a lot of history tied to it, related to whiteness, if you will. Both of them do, but essentially one is really bold coming forward. And if you
Oh
use
yeah.
religion, especially here in America, you can't deny what they say, because then you become an enemy of the state. You become the devil. You become all these other, and the worst names that we could put to you is that's what we want to tie you to. But I think it's just really more of a just a cry out. It's just you know a cry out. We were able to survive and get through the history of time during the eras of civil rights and slavery. And now it's time for us to do our part, realize that we can do more, realize that we do hold some level of power, of we learn hold level of understanding, knowledge and wisdom and science and
We do.
you
We hold a lot, brother Malachi. Listen, in 2008, I was part of the International Corps of Volunteers who came to the United States to work for the Obama election. From Ottawa, we were two black people, unfortunately, only two black people with many white people, who came to work in Michigan for the Obama election. Consciousness to elect to put a black person there. For me, I wasn't a fool. I knew once he's president of the United States. I was proven right. He bombed Africa. But the symbolism of a black person in that White House built by slaves to show to our black youth and black people, yes, you can. You know, as Nas said, I know I can. It's no longer I believe I can. Now you know you can. Let's do this. This is in the same narrative where we must understand Joe Biden would not have won in 2020 without the support of notably black women. He was being a loser before black women, and I think her name is Stacey Abrams. I may get the name wrong. The sister from
mm-hmm,
Georgia.
Stacey. Yep.
Before black women stood up for Joe Biden. So yes, we do matter in these elections. We may not be we black people in the USA may no longer be the number one minority. It's Latinos. How did they become that? Birth rate. Birth rate. I think statistics by Pew, the Pew Academy, Pew statistics say 50% of Latino women have the first child by age 18. So absolutely. But we do have a part to play. We must get out to vote. And don't forget, this guy, Donald Trump, he didn't have a problem putting 5 innocent black men in jail and throwing away the key. He never apologized for it. And yet he goes to the Bronx trying to pass as I understand black people. No, 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 no. No, no apologies. Never forget that. Let us dare to impose being respected. He's not a friend. You see, you were saying the two parties. The way I put it to people, the Democrats are indirectly racist. You have to look harder to find the racism. The Republicans are directly racist. It's in your face. They hide it less. It's right there for you.
Is it
When
changing
I
the whole world, like
the,
Europe, Canada, or I
oh
mean,
yeah, it's the whole
is it
Western world.
French?
Yeah,
Yes,
it's the whole
Israel, isn't
Western
it?
world. Yeah,
They're all going the similar way.
absolutely.
Mm. Brother, you have an appointment tomorrow. It was wonderful. I knew it was going to be
Thank you.
amazing. I'll make sure I leave, if Little Trails guys on my Facebook, if you want to learn more, listen to more, and we'll definitely do more and have more of this, brother. And what I'm gonna
Thank
do
you.
here different too is if you guys, this is my Cash App. So if you send something to me, I'm gonna make sure what I'm gonna do is I want to get his and send it to him. That's my Cash App because I always like to do that. And just to, I don't care if it's he's got a wife and daughter. If it's buying him some a dinner for his kids, for his wife and daughter, that's cool with me. But I want to do something. I'm going to do it anyway. I'm gonna message you, get you if you have Cash App or if you have any kind of other, well, I'll figure out a way to get you what I want to get you. No matter what, if you guys want to contribute, that's mine, Malachi Gross, of course, and that's my Venmo account right there. Because I believe in at least being slightly a blessing, even if it's buying a coffee.
Thank you. I'm honored. I'm honored.
Most definitely, man. You guys have been amazing. You guys have stayed up. This is, of course, my longest show, and I didn't care because I knew it was going to be good. And I all my Miss Dorothy there, you know,
Thank you. Thank you.
and Miss Deidre. Hey, and we have Miss Gina, that's Bishop Pearson's
Yes. Yes. That's what I
former
said.
wife.
Yeah.
And so people still are in the room. You guys are amazing. You guys are really cool, Miss Velma. It's really great. We do this, brother, every Thursday. I do this 8:30 Central. And a lot of times I talk about various topics. Mostly, of course, everything's about expanding your consciousness and unlocking your potential beyond belief.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having. Thank you for reaching out. I get many people coming at me on the Facebook and emails, and you get suspicious. You get like, what's the attention? And also as a consultant, right? It's always as a consultant, but especially as a family man and involved, with so much work, where to prioritize, where to put my time. But honestly, anytime I get to spend with my Black people worldwide to help walk in the footsteps of our heroes, of our ancestors, and to help create, if I can give a very short example, this was in the winter, maybe let's say February. Yes, February, I believe. I gave a training to public servants in a small, very white town. And here I am going to the parking lot to my car, and someone called me. It was a Black father with his two daughters, and he told me that he heard me years ago on a show. I told you, the KK show from Montreal. He hated what I said about religion. It bothered him. It pissed him off. He told me, I was like, in my head, in my mind, I was like, are you still mad? And he was like, but you know what? I did what you said. I went to look up what you said. I searched, and he thanked me. He's like, I'm no longer religious. I am into African spirituality. My children have names of our ancestors. He just went on and on. And I was just like, wow, in this small white town. And I was like, how did you recognize me? He's like, well, the shades and the traditional hat. How many Black people are walking around like that in winter? I was like, my brother. Yeah. Yeah. So no, thank you so much. Any moment that we get to do this, because it's not the fact that it was 3 hours long, but think about that young Haitian youth. It's a life that we can change. When Brother Malachi every Thursday takes a moment, when we have people who come in the chat, take a moment. When I take a moment here, my wife is very supportive. She's very supportive because we know something like this. When we change a life, it's a Black family course that we change.
Mm.
That's what it is. It's not a game. It's life or death. Very truthfully.
Mm. Yes, yes. I appreciate it. These are coming in, brother. I will definitely reach out to you and reach out, to you online so that I can do what I want to do. And until next time, guys, I appreciate you. We're signing off. Have a good one.